Welcome back to episode 35, imagine, and part 11, I believe, of the World Peace Jubilee story of P S Gilmore. And this is basically going to be about the photographs, about the memories, and a picture tells 1,000 words. Here is a stereo viewer, which was what you would normally use to view these type of photographs. What I've now done is I've taken a half of one of these photographs. I have scanned it. In some cases, I have basically used tint to try and bring out more of the detail of it. I actually believe that the only way to look at these is through a stereo viewer, as Matthew Brady did for the American Civil War. Normally, I store them all in their various categories, like, for instance, here these envelopes to keep them safe. But they are beautiful. I think I've somewhere around 90 photographs of the World Peace Jubilee. Here is a photograph of the first truss after going up in the Colosseum for the World Peace Jubilee. And you can see the ropes. Of course, block and tackle was the only machinery used. These men here were part of the 800 crew of Irish that built the World Peace Jubilee. And that beam that's going down through the center basically gave the building its squareness in construction. Here's the finished product with the rail track on one side, and from the other end, the rail track again. Now you can see all the flags, etc. In the middle, there was a gigantic flag, the International Musical Festival, it said. Here's the construction site as it existed when it was been built, and they're finishing the side roofs there with vents and so on. And here is, up over the Colosseum, the balloon, which was tethered to that little house in front of the Colosseum. And there you could see the sights of Boston from a height. Bravery. And in front, you've got your hackneys. Here you've got your haberdasheries and various stalls. The sign over the one there shows that there's very good gold and silver prices been offered there for anyone who wants to have a few dollars extra. And in front of the building, you had your cannons, which were fired remotely. They fired blanks and they kept time to the music. And note how close the people are to the cannon. And I'll show you that even closer now in a second. Of course, you've got your rail there. There's enormous activity. The smell of horses must have been incredible as well. And here is a close-up indeed. Imagine the loud bang of these cannons. And these were Civil War cannons, which were used and fired. I've yet to find out who the regiment was that fired them, but they were definitely one of the attractive features of the event, particularly during the Anvil Chorus. Here's the interior and the church-type seats overlooking the center part of the Colosseum down. Follow the walkway straight down there. An enormous building, 500 feet long, 300 feet wide, 120 feet high in the middle, seated 50,000, orchestra 2,000, and choir 20,000. Here's the back of the choir from one of the corners, and as again follow the walkway, and you're basically looking straight down at where the podium would have been, and whatever conductor was on duty that day. The coloured flags, etc., they were all hand-coloured. Here's from one of the gallerias, the full length of the actual building, and you see how long this is. And this is basically a promenade that you could walk right round and stretch the legs, as they say. But note all the timber again. Note also the metal that was used to buttress the building itself. Wonderful piece of architecture. Again, from the other side of the choir, again looking down at where the orchestra was, and obviously the conductor stood. And that straight down is towards the front of the building. Here is the changing rooms for either the choir or the musicians. And you see the umbrellas and the coats and the slippers or shoes there on the hung up on the wall, and a jug of water. There's no electricity, there's no phones, there's no none of what we assume to be normal today. And here is a rehearsal being viewed from the front of the building. There's no one in attendance except all of the musicians and the choir. And we're facing towards the gigantic organ at the back, overlooked by a beautiful mural, a Greek mural of the goddess of peace, whose name I cannot think of at the moment. And here is the music committee. And at the very back is my good friend, Patrick S. Gilmore. Same build, mustache, same hairstyle, same everything. I've identified most of the music committee here. But again, there's no technology. These are men literally thinking on their feet, talking on their feet, and making this up as they go along. But by golly, what great imaginations and innovators they all collectively were. Gas lights on top, and I think there was 28,000 feet of gas pipeline. This is the pipes of the organ. There was 2 compressors used to fire this up, and at the time this was the largest organ in certainly in America, if not in the world. The very famous Anvil Chorus was featured the Firemen of Boston, and here are their anvils. And each of those anvils were labelled because they all had different weights. They were all forged in Birmingham, England, to give a different pitch. And so each of them, as I said, were labelled. And so here we've a close-up of not only the choir, the musicians, but also the here, by the way, I should also say, is the band of the Kaiser, and the white figure over the other side of those bandsmen is Madame Peschka Leitner from Germany, the Kaiser's favorite soprano. Here is another view of the musicians and the bands. I think this is also the German band, but I am not quite sure. In the foreground, you have the parquet seating. The parquet seating was the most expensive seating around. They all had their custom-built parquet sofas. And this is looking from the organ back towards the front, where you saw that gentleman standing as they did the rehearsal. Approximately 50,000 people in there at this moment in time. And you see the banners. The banners came from every state in America. They even came from Switzerland. Every canton from Switzerland had their banners, and it brightened up the area. And talking about brightening up, you could buy these Stereoviews hand colored, and this is an example of those hand colored. They were more expensive because there was no color printing in those days. I feel that this is from oratorio day. It was this I can confidently say was one of the disasters of the World Peace Jubilee. It was Handel's oratorio, and the content was specifically very religious. It did not attract the type of numbers that they felt it should. Here's from the press headquarters, and in the press headquarters, over 180 newspapers were represented from all over America, Canada, South America, and Europe. And here are those newspaper men and women. On the left, you can see the lady there on the left. They're all writing their articles for their newspapers to be sent off by one of the 10 telegraphs set up by Western Union. Note, no phones, no electricity, no light bulbs, no modern conveniences. Most of the photographs that I have do not have people in the actual Colosseum, but there is a reason for that. People move. People do not stay steady for too long. And in the case of photography in these days, people had to stay steady for 10 seconds at least. Otherwise, each person appeared as a blur. Here is one of those occasions. In this case, the photographer had to carry this huge camera up the steps to the rafters and look down. And here, according to the stereo view, I have Horace Greeley and Nathaniel Banks seated beside each other. I cannot identify them. If anyone knows them well, please let me know. Here is either a very bad attendance or attendance building up for a big performance. I'm not quite sure which. But notice all of the heavy garments that the ladies particularly wore and so on. All of these seats were numbered with labels on each pole. You can see those black labels there. And here, talking about blurring, this is the Galleria that I showed you earlier. You could walk down the whole length of the building, the promenade. Here, however, we've got the camera too close to the people, so they're moving. They're appearing as a blur. And straight down over their heads is where the band and the orchestra and, of course, all the choirs were up on the left-hand side in the distance. This is from Johann Strauss's Jubilee Ball and the palms, and the music stands behind the palm. Of course, he takes the picture of the palm because the palm does not move. The next picture will show you a little bit more of the stage, but it will also show you that with the original tint, now this is looking at the organ, etc. in the background and the beautiful mural behind and so on, but you can't pick out too much of the details. So what I've done in the next one is I've used some tinting, which you may or may not like, but to me, it brings out more of the detail of this stage where Herr Strauss and the orchestra would have played. So again, we've got our palms and so on. You can imagine the sounds of the Blue Danube and all the rest of his beautiful waltzes emanating from this area. Quite a few people, ladies, fainted for this performance. Here's the reception area, which was built especially for all the visiting dignitaries, governors from all over the US, foreign ministers, but the most important of all was, of course, President Ulysses S. Grant, his wife, and the complete cabinet of the United States of America. And also, obviously, people like Horace Greeley and the governor and former governor like Nathaniel Banks. And this was a beautifully appointed room, area, or whatever, for drinks, reception, and even the clock in the corner, and of course all of the gas lights around the poles, and so on and so forth. This was an engineering feat. And here is the actual hotel where President Grant stayed in. It was called St. James's Hotel on Newton Street, I believe. And there, both he and his complete cabinet stayed. So theoretically, for the Jubilee, this was the seat of the American government, where all major decisions could be taken. And so, thank you very much for listening to me, and I hope you've enjoyed this. It was a pleasure to talk to you, and that's it. Thank you very much. Bye-bye now.